I think there's nothing wrong with editing the literature that you want to do. And in fact, I encourage it. I'm reminded, as you said that, of Mark Williams, who has done 1812 transcription for sixth grade band, and it works. And again, as long as the content, the seed of the composition is quality, then do what you have to do to make it work. Rearrange it, rewrite it, do whatever. But if the seed, like I said, is quality, then it's worthy and it's worth doing. Instead of doing a particular young band piece that might work on technical aspects, make sure there's a musical component to why you're selecting the literature.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the great fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Everything Band is sponsored by Celtic Horizon Arts, the leading tour operator for the arts in the United Kingdom and Ireland. Celtic Horizon Arts hosts bands, orchestras, and choirs from around the world, and they are now taking inquiries for their 2020 Band Festival in Limerick, Ireland. This festival, featuring composer Johannes will include clinics, masterclasses, and cultural exchanges. Bands and individual musicians are all welcome to participate and can find out more by contacting Keith Kelly at keith@CelticHorizonTours.com or find out more on Facebook at Celtic Horizon Arts. Now, on to the episode and this week's guest, Larry Gookin. Hi, Larry.
Hello, Mark.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thank you so much for joining me. I was wondering if you could introduce yourself for my listeners.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Larry Gookin. Just recently retired from Central Washington University in 2015. And I have, 43 years of teaching, and I'm enjoying retirement, and I enjoy teaching. I'm doing a little bit of conducting here and there and clinics off and on. So life is good.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You have quite the career. I was wondering if maybe you could take us back to the beginning a little bit, though, and we'll start there. And how did you kind of get into music, and what's your instrument, and how did that all start?
I started out on euphonium and then switched to the ugly valve trombone to play in the jazz program, and then moved over to slide trombone. I grew up in Montana, a beautiful little town, Columbia Falls, Montana, 25 miles from Glacier Park in the Flathead Valley. And I had this really amazing band director, Don Lawrence. He was the kind of director who would do everything. He gave everyone free private lessons in the old Rubank book, and was really a good jazz band conductor and arranger. And so that was, one of my first loves was just playing trombone in the ugly, like I said, valve trombone in the jazz band. But he also was really a fantastic concert band conductor. We did the great literature. We did the whole suites and Granger, La Fiesta Mexicana, some Persichetti. And I think the most important message he gave me as a young player was, I remember he said, I was doing a jazz trombone solo, and he said, "Say something, Gookin." And that really got me thinking about what music's all about. It's about, sharing emotions and feelings through music. So I had a great start with a wonderful band director.
As you think back to that high school band and that director, and you mentioned those pieces that you played, was there any lessons beyond that say something, that music has something to say, that you took with you as you sort of went past high school?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was the whole esprit de corps, the whole work ethic, uh, getting along with people, and enjoying the competition, not on who's number one, number two, but the competition within to improve yourself. So there's just so many levels of I think commitment that are required of a young high school, junior high age student. So a whole bunch of things, and it really put me on the right direction, I think, as far as a young student who wasn't a good student.
What would you say? I mean, when was the moment that you knew you were going to be a professional musician, where you said to yourself, I think I want to do this as my career?
Yeah, I think it was pretty young. I remember we were doing kind of a little musical in the high school level, and Don Lawrence, my band director, said, well, would you like to conduct this? And so he put me on the spot right then. I think I was probably a junior in high school. And I thought, wow, this is something else. And so I, went on to University of Montana and got inspired by David Whitwell, who was our college band director. And I think I knew right away, like I said, when I was in high school, I wanted to do this. And, I had, visions of being a professional trombonist, went down to LA for a while and hung out, but came back and decided that music ed and conducting and teaching was my real passion.
And so you were at the University of Montana. And then, so did you go into teaching right after finishing the degree? I mean, I know you mentioned that you were in LA. Can you kind of take me through that timeline?
Yeah, I did. When I was down in LA, that was kind of a summer thing. And, took a couple lessons from Bob Marsteller, who was USC, and was going to go transfer schools and decided it was too expensive, obviously, and then went back to Montana, finished the degree there, and then went right out into teaching. I taught in Havre, Montana, and Libby, Montana. Did 5 years of teaching public schools there, and then went on to graduate work in Eugene, Oregon, and taught at South Eugene High School.
I see. And so how many years were you at South Eugene?
5 years.
Oh, so you did about 10 years of teaching?
10 years public school, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I know that you're a longtime band director at Central Washington. How did that come about? How did that happen?
Well, I really have never had I was there for 34 years, never had a desire to leave the Northwest, and pretty much decided that the glove fit perfectly here for me. Primarily an undergrad program. I enjoyed working with that age group. Maybe it took a little longer to get a couple pieces prepared for concerts because there weren't a lot of grad students in the program. But after 5 or so years here, I really decided this is what I wanted to do, and I had no desire to leave Central Washington. So it's been a fantastic fit for me and my family, and a great place to raise kids. And now I've got 5 grandkids running around in between Montana and Washington State, and so it's really been been very fortunate. It's been a wonderful place to live and wonderful students to work with, and we've done great literature, and I have no complaints whatsoever.
Can you tell me about the program at Central Washington and maybe the hows of how you built that program and sort of shaped it to the way you wanted it?
Sure. I arrived at Central in 1981, and I can remember thinking about asking myself the question, what have I done? I left this just such a talented bunch of students at South Eugene High School. And actually the program wasn't as strong as what I left in the public schools. And, but there was a great staff here, and it already had a good reputation, as far as a music ed school. And the potential was, I thought, there's nothing we couldn't do as long as we worked hard at it. And so it turned very quickly into what I thought was, going the right direction. And it just took a couple years, and all of a sudden the program was growing. And then, when I first started teaching, I did everything. I did the low brass, observed student teachers, taught music ed classes, one of those typical, hire this person to do everything. And as the program grew over the years, we were fortunate to hire a full-time trombone teacher, an assistant director of bands, and the program just flourished till today now that with a new director who's doing a great job, Louis Norfleet, they have pretty close to 4 concert bands, and the jazz program is flourishing too. So I think probably the success of this program is due to the fact that we have so many music ed graduates teaching in the Northwest. And they, how the recruitment works when you get your students out there and they've had a good experience at an institution, they encourage their students to come back. And I think that's been the bond that has really helped. Outstanding support from the university, excellent teaching going on, and it's certainly been a team effort. It's not because of me totally, for sure.
Yeah, no question. I think that the alumni form the most important part of a music program.
Really, yeah.
So
sure.
You've had a lot of, obviously, former students that have gone out and had success as teachers. What lessons did you send them out with, or what did you want them to know when they left that was maybe most important?
Well, I think that's a great question, and you never know what message you're giving your students. I don't think it's. I think if we as music educators, as a trombonist teaching privately or as a conductor on the podium, show that we are passionate about the music and we really care for the musicians who are in front of you or beside you if you're teaching privately. And if you somehow connect to the expressive quality of the literature, you find literature that's good literature, that has musical content, that has an emotional message, allows you to be expressive, and if you show that from the podium, it's going to be transferred. And then showing care about the musicians. The question I've always asked myself throughout my career: what's more important, the music or the person that I'm teaching? And I think that's a question that we should ask ourselves every day when we're in front of musicians. And if you can find a balance between the two, and maybe they're both equally important, who knows? But I think that's kind of in general what has been my philosophy, of teaching. You go back to, the Bennett, Reimer, Emotion and Meaning in Music, and David Elliot's, Music Matters, and you try to figure out why we are doing what we're doing, and it's not always about the musical performance. It's not always about the student. Quite often, it's about the message. What are we trying to say through our art form? So there's a lot. I think there's a lot to consider when you're thinking about what kind of message are we giving to our musicians in front of us, and what kind of continued force you want with your former students as far as what's important in music art form. There's a lot involved there. I rambled a bit there, Mark, but I hope you got the message.
No, those are usually the best answers. Yeah. So you mentioned literature, and that comes up from time to time on the podcast, and depending on who I'm talking to. And, we're in the summer, and so now is when all the new releases are coming out, and there's just so much music available for people to see. What are you looking for when you're looking for good literature? What are the signs, regardless of the grade level?
Well, that's a great question. And I think my process of literature selection and appreciation of quality literature has really changed over the years. I think earlier in my career, I was more concerned about what's appropriate for the grade level that I'm teaching. And I would look at music in an academic perspective, like, okay, what's the range of the instrument? And don't get me wrong, that's all very important. But quite often I was doing literature, especially for the younger students, that really didn't have much content. And I understand the music, there's music for educational purposes and that whole thing. But later on in my career, I quit looking academically at the literature selection. And if the music didn't speak to me, if there was something that didn't excite me about it, in fact, I would say the last 10 years of my conducting, I would just listen to music. I wouldn't even try to get into the element of technique. And if it somehow spoke to me, then I'd be interested. Then I'd go back and look at it. It was kind of being distant. And I remember going to Symphony, or we had season tickets to the Seattle Symphony, and trying to not to be analytical about what I'm hearing, the little out of tune that's going on. Excuse me, my dog's barking.
It's okay.
And that was a real challenge there. You want to put this on pause and I'll get rid of my dog?
Sure. We can take a moment.
Be right back.
We were talking about music selection, and you
had
just mentioned you'd gone to the Seattle Symphony, and
and so I think if you really analyze music and left brain focus on it and not try to appreciate what you're hearing from an emotional perspective, often we select literature for the wrong reason. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And, I can remember many times going to Seattle Symphony and just wondering, wow, I don't think that's a great piece of music, even though it's been there forever. And yeah, it was wonderfully played. It was technically played beautifully, but not much being said.
So how about composers and new music? Did you have many opportunities to be involved in commissions or have composers on campus?
Not a lot, but one composer in particular was here many times. That was David Maslanka. In fact, for my final concert, for my retirement concert, he wrote a piece that my former students commissioned, St. Francis, and was here for that final event. I really connected with David and his music, and did many of his works over the years, and was involved in a consortium, probably 4 or 5 with him, and led one on his flute concerto, that song for flute that he wrote. So probably, the most involved I've been is there. And then I've also contributed to many other commissions throughout my career.
Yeah, David was a special man.
Absolutely. And it's, I miss him dearly. It was so unfortunate that it's been a year now. And in fact, today is Allison, his wife, passed away today a year ago. Mm-hmm. And then he followed her passing less than a month after that. And my wife, Karen, and I were good friends, and actually were in Missoula where he passed away during that time. But his music, again, the emotional content, it's interesting when you do the academic analysis of David's music. It's not that complex. It's not like Persichetti's symphony where you have harmonic language is thick and complicated. It's very open, and as you know, as a composer, simple. And a lot of my colleagues that I respect dearly couldn't or didn't relate to his music, and didn't play a lot of his literature. And so it's interesting. I found that very interesting over the years. And his obviously his influence on wind band literature has been great for sure.
Yeah, certainly enormous. I find his music really visceral.
Yes.
It just grabs you. I think that's important especially for young musicians and kids, and when they're in their formative years, to play that music that makes them feel something, as you said.
Yeah.
And I think back on my high school playing, and I played Festivo when I was a freshman in high school, and that was the first time I thought, wow, this is something that's different. And my senior year, we did Irish tune and the whole first suite, and that's when I knew I was going to be a musician.
Yeah, right.
Good
Right.
music matters a lot, and feeling things matters.
Yeah. We had Nelhýbel on campus here too, and it was an experience.
Yeah, can you tell me about that? I've never met him. I don't know much about him.
Oh, he's a crazy man. It was absolutely wonderful. I can remember, there were a couple of instances where when I was with David Whitwell at the University of Montana, we had Johannes in and we had Nelhýbel there. But the one memory that just came up now was that when I first saw Nelhýbel work, we were doing his, I can't remember the name of it now, it doesn't matter. And David Whitwell introduced him, and as he was walking to the podium, he pulled his coat off and threw it down and undid his tie, and it was like go for it from then on. So it just very energetic, and same experience when we had him on campus here for a week long for a new music festival. And he was good friends with our chairman, Don White, who composer also. And so anyway, yeah, exciting energy. It certainly was inspiring. And we just had a great week while he was here.
So Larry, I have a lot of junior high and high school band directors listening. And so I really want to kind of get into what are some of maybe the mistakes that you made or some of the lessons you learned over the years about teaching that maybe we can save someone from making?
Well, when I think about I've been so fortunate in my career. I've never taught where a program wasn't already solid. And so as far as, developing a program from the bottom up, I've never had that experience. And I'm thinking about my first job where gentleman C.I. Carlson, who was out of Vandercook School, was the high school director, moved to the junior high, and just held my hand that first year. I think I learned more that first year teaching than I did any college degree. And he just held my hand and helped me pick literature. So if at all possible, my point is, if you can find a mentor when you get out there, your first year of teaching, get on the phone and ask questions. I was so fortunate to have Cliff Carlson there to answer all my questions, and maybe that can't happen. But if you have an opportunity as a young conductor, young music educator, don't do it on your own. Go for help. Ask for help. There's so many resources now out there, and don't be embarrassed. Don't think you need to know everything. It's a lifelong process of figuring out this band thing, and be open to criticism and be open to help.
Larry, what does it look like when you first open a new piece of music and you're studying that score? How are you thinking about preparing the band to learn that?
Well, I can remember going, in my early conducting and teaching, where I would do the macro analysis and the micro analysis, and think that I needed to know every note in the score. And it's nice to know everything, but when you're doing 4 bands and 6 choirs or whatever your schedule is, to really put that as your goal, to really know everything and anything about the score, I think is a little bit unrealistic. But at the same time, if you are really going to understand what the composer's intent was, you really have to look at the music through the composer's eyes. And to do that is a challenging, arduous process. And it takes time, hours and hours and hours of score study. So with that in mind, I recommend, because of the schedule, so tear it apart. Do a harmonic analysis, do a phrasal analysis, understand the structure, understand the emotional content of that piece. So you are constantly growing as a young conductor, and you're using the academic approach to score study that you learned in your undergraduate or graduate school. But boy, you can't do that on every piece. There's just not enough time in the day. And then the other part of this whole thing, what I kind of alluded to earlier, is back away from the technical aspect of a score and listen to it. Don't look at the score, and you just close your eyes and listen to it. And what is this music saying to you?
Do you have any thoughts about how to help build that community around you? I know you mentioned mentorship, but how did you build community around you?
I don't recall ever thinking about, I've got to build a community around me. I think it's just a natural process, and it probably goes back to what I alluded to earlier in the interview here, is that, in a sense, if you show your passion for the people you're working with and your passion for the music, and you create an environment that is safe, emotionally safe and open, where people can feel like they are part of this other thing that we have very difficult to describe, this art of music making, and then you're going to have people around you that are supporting what you're doing and are going to want to be involved with that. And you have to put your ego aside. You really need to somehow show humility, and any success you have in this business isn't because of you; it's because of other people, and it's because that we are so fortunate to share this musical process with great composers that have a real insight into the purpose and why we are here. What is important in life. They're big questions. It's not how much you know, or it's what kind of person you are. And that's when the art form comes alive. That's when the community has relevance, and that's when we all, I think, become aware of purpose of why we're even on this planet. So it's such a big thing that I think if we are all honest and show humility and show passion and care, you're going to create that environment.
Yeah, you've mentioned passion and caring a few times in this interview. I would say that sounds like something that you've been a guiding principle for you, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And it goes back to my high school band director, Don Lawrence. When you play that horn, say something, and that got me going. Like, hey, wait a minute, what's this all about? Technique is important, and we all work hard to get our ensembles to, play with good rhythm and intonation and balance and blend and articulation, on and on and on. And sometimes we forget, why we're really here, why we're really doing this art form. It's really to, create this lovely environment where we can share the art form.
I'd like to take a short break from our episode to invite you to listen to my music at markjconnor.com. I am always seeking opportunities for collaboration. If you are interested in commissioning a new piece of music for me, having me work with your students in person or via Skype, or to just say hello, please drop me a line at markjconnor@gmail.com or through the contact form on my website. Where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
Yeah, I think you can have a healthy competition as long as your whole motivation isn't to win. There's a certain energy that happens, when you think about, when you audition to be in band, even as an individual, you're competing against your colleagues. And so the competitive aspect of the art form is always there. I liked, and I have over the years, that you're really competing with yourself. Self-improvement is the whole motive for competition. And as long as you can see growth and feel growth in your own playing and work, then competition is healthy. If you're going after the trophy, if the whole motivation is to win, then it's the wrong type of motivation. If you win, that's great. And it's wonderful to have those kind of accolades in your career and in your own playing and whatever. But at the bottom of all why you're doing what you're doing in the art form can't be to win a trophy.
So this one is difficult for many music teachers because we tend to have very busy lives. And so how do you find work-life balance in your career? Or how did you find work-life balance in your career?
I'm still working on that one. I don't think that ever stops. I'm so fortunate to have the love of my life stick by my side. We've been together for 52 years. We met on a band tour.
Oh, wow.
At the David Whitwell's, we went and played at the National CBDNA in 1967 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And that's when we met. And so we've been more or less together. We didn't get married till 70, for the last 50 some years, and have two wonderful daughters, and 5 grandkids now. So, fortunately, Karen, who's my wife, was active in music too. She was a poet, and she even played piccolo and flute longer than I did. I retired from the Yakima Symphony before she did, and she just retired 2 years ago. And so she understands in the art what a challenge it is to be an artist, a conductor, band director. But it has not been easy. It's been a total challenge. And in fact, now we joke about we spend more time, and I do in particular, with my grandkids than I did with my own kids because of the demands of the job. I can remember in Eugene, Oregon, I had decided I was playing in the symphony, playing in a brass quintet, playing in a jazz band, working on my doctorate, teaching high school band. It was on and on and on. And it was like, this is not working. I'm not seeing my 2 beautiful daughters. And so I had decided at that time that I was either going to quit the high school band stuff and teach beginning band, so I'd have more time to pursue playing and being with my family, or find a cushy college job. And fortunately, we left Eugene and moved to Ellensburg, and it was a better move for us personally. So that's my example, and it continues today of trying to find a balance between family and what you're doing in the biz. And my only suggestion to the young directors out there is say no. Don't take that extra gig, and think of your family. Schedule things with your family, and you'll never get everything done every day. So don't even try. But somehow in there, find a common time for your family, and otherwise you will burn out, as I've seen so many directors do.
Yeah, it's interesting conflict, isn't it, that say no to things, because we're taught as musicians, especially if you want to be a performer, to say yes to everything to build your network and your performance. I don't know what I'm trying to say, your gigs.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's a tough one. Certainly that's the conflict point.
It is, and especially earlier on in your career, where you're doing the ladder climbing and you're trying to improve in your art form, and you're moving on to other gigs or whatever. And if you're not giving, it's a demanding job without question. If you're not giving 100%, then things probably won't happen, But I've seen former students leave here and go out and not have a successful family life because of it. And it is trying. And like I started out on this section saying that I've been fortunate to have a wife and a partner who's understands, and yes, we've had our counseling, and we've worked hard to keep our relationship open, and it's been a wonderful 50 years. I can't thank her enough.
Yeah, I'm glad you acknowledge that it's not always easy. Sometimes we see the sanitized version of life through Facebook or TV, and we think, oh, it should just be perfect, but it's not.
Yep.
All right, this is the big question, and the one that I get the most variety of answers. What are the challenges facing music education, and how can we best meet them?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a big one. And I'm kind of answering a lot of stuff in the same way. And, I understand the logistics of scheduling and, the budgets and all that, all the technical aspects of running a program. And, the big thing is money and support. And, public school education is and even in recent to not getting the support. It looks like in the future might not have as much support. And so, that's a big challenge for sure. But I'd like to go back to the whole content thing. If in music education, if we are not teaching the music as an expressive art form, then it's going to disappear. And yes, we have music that we produce for graduation and athletic events and that whole part of our public school atmosphere. But at the core has to be that expressive quality of literature, good composers. And so from the aesthetic aspect of why we exist in music education in public schools, it's got to be for that reason. Again, going back to my high school band director, Say Something. This is about emotional connection, expressive connection. And as long as we have that, then we're unique. Anyway, that's one answer. Sorry, Mark.
No. I know. Believe me, it often stymies many of people I talk to because there's so many different problems and so many different solutions and so many ways to look at the question. It's interesting what you said about the art form because as we get into issues of advocacy, those arguments tend to fall on deaf ears when we're talking about budgets or we're talking to school boards, and so we tend to get wrapped up in ideas like the extrinsic value of music, or we talk about the number of hours that teachers can teach and student contact and all these things that may make budgets balance. But, we sometimes lose sight of the fact that it's really the music. Yeah,
I understand that for sure. And the thing we build esprit de corps and all these other things and compare music to the athletic organizations and the foreign language. There's so many other extrinsic reasons, but the intrinsic reasons are exactly why we should exist.
Yeah, music is valuable because it's valuable, because it's music.
Yeah, there you go.
It just is.
It is.
Well, it's true, but we want to justify it so much, which I understand. We're all fighting to keep what we have.
I guess in reality, you have to present all those ideas and concepts, and because we know who's handling the purse strings.
One of the things you've brought up a few times is the idea of esprit de corps, and I sort of asked a little bit earlier about community, but one of the things about the band that I don't think we talk enough about is the place that it offers for kids, and the fact that it gives an identity to kids.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. You look in the band room, the environment. In a positive environment in the band area or choir or orchestra or whatever, and you see the students flocking to those areas. They're there at lunch. They're there after school. They're there before school begins. And again, it's this safe environment of expressing each other's feelings and being involved in something that is successful. And I can't underestimate the word success, because that's what everyone's looking for. They want to be able to say, I am good at what I'm doing. I'm succeeding here, and I'm with people I like and can relate to. And so this whole esprit de corps thing is really, I think, key to what's going on, And as you know, Mark, as we age, we can count our true friends on one hand. There are many people we like and respect, but when I look back on my career, both as a student and as a music educator, my closest friends have been people who have been involved with this environment of the art form. So it's pretty amazing, that aspect of what happens. Even band directors. When we started years ago, when I was Northwest Division president for CBDNA, and we combined with Western Division in Reno, all of a sudden I have all these wonderful friends and colleagues that we have a wonderful esprit de corps going on in music education on the West Coast because of that one event. And so the tie-in is yes, as musicians and students and organizations, but it goes as the directors. It's really kind of a wonderful thing that happens in music, certainly a family atmosphere.
Yeah, no question. I have yet to go to a state educators conference or the Midwest Clinic and find myself without someone to talk to.
Isn't that true?
I've never had to sit on a bench and read the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Larry. So this next question is related to one I asked you earlier, but what advice would you give to your younger self, perhaps the 18-year-old that was staring across the dais at the high school graduation?
Well, put your ego somewhere else would probably be the quick answer. And I don't think I really have an arrogant attitude about what's going on, but as soon as you understand as a young conductor, teacher, performer, that it's not all about you, it's about us, it's about what we can do together. And it's not a competition of I am better than you. That'd be my big suggestion, and then the second part of that would be just open your ears and eyes and get help. I kind of referred to that earlier. Those would be the two things.
If you had a choice, what would be the final work for band or wind ensemble that you'd conduct?
I've thought about this because I know you asked that before, and it is a hard question to answer, and I can give you one. I would probably want to do Maslanka Symphony 4 again, because that's such a thrilling piece to conduct. But it's the political answer here is like what you suggested is every great composition has, again, back to this emotional connection. And so, there are so many great pieces that take me to that place that there are so many I'd like to do. An example is my final retirement program that I did. I did a mixed bag. I did I did the Lincolnshire Posy. Mm-hmm. I did the Festive Overture for band, and I did the Overture Candide and a transcription of the Bibel Ave Maria and some of the Persichetti Symphony. So it was all a mixed thing. I couldn't decide on which one I wanted to do if I were to die the next day. And then had David Maslanka, and he did a commissioned work that he brought in. So it was really a transcription. Did a Sousa March too. I should have added that in there. Mm-hmm. It was everything that over my career that I had really different elements, and I thought a lot about that program. I had to have a Sousa March in there. I probably should have done the whole suite in E flat too. But anyway, when you think about all the great literature that's out there and what is the most important, composition or composer in our idiom, then boy, it's hard. And I understand you don't want to offend anyone because there's so many great composers out there. I think if I had an opportunity, if I really knew I could do one piece and I was going to die the next day, I would like to do Brahms' Requiem.
All right, Larry, is there anything coming up that you'd like to share or promote?
Well, maybe share. Nothing to promote since I'm no longer really active. I am doing quite a few, guest things. And what I'm working on now is I'm doing a clinic at, it's a long ways away. It's in February at the Northwest Music Educators Conference in Portland on Beyond the Notes is the title. And I might have stolen that from somebody. And doing a lot of reading on, what's really happening when we have an expressive moment through music. What does it really do to us? And so I'm playing with that. And how do you teach emotion, or can you teach emotion? How do you teach expression in music? We have what I consider so many techno bands, ensembles out there that technically just play the socks off the music, the rhythms, amazing stuff. High school bands sounding better than a lot of university bands in the country. But very seldom am I hearing an ensemble just knock me out musically. I'm like, I can feel that they feel this quality or this emotion in the music. And so I'm going to have a live band there. I don't know what's going to happen with this, but that's kind of a goal of mine. How do we be more expressive? How can we get to that element of music making that really makes a difference in our lives?
Yeah, that sounds great. Will you adapt that for perhaps a Midwest kind of presentation?
Oh, probably not. I do more fly fishing than I do conducting these days, Mark.
I understand. Well, I'd like to hear that presentation if you have that available after you present it.
Maybe we'll get in touch and I can tell you if it worked.
Sure, that'd be great. Is there anything that I've missed that you'd like to add?
I don't think so, man. This is really a wonderful project you got going here, and it's extremely thorough. And again, like I said before, personally, it's been a joy to reflect and think back on all these wonderful musicians who have influenced me. I didn't get a chance to mention Bob Wagner at the University of Oregon. I don't know if you knew Bob, but man, what a brilliant mind. And that's when I started learning about Stravinsky's octet and Ignaz Dahl's Sinfonetta and all those pieces that you don't play with your high school band.
Yeah, sure.
But no, it's been just a fantastic career. I'm not done yet, but at age 70, you slow down and you're still working for that balance like we were talking about earlier. And I'm spending more time with my daughters and my wife and my grandkids.
That's great.
It's been a great career.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. How can people get in touch with you?
I'm still, as emeritus professor, using the email at Central Washington University. So it's Gookin L at cwu.edu.
Perfect. Larry, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.